Welcome back to Close to Broke. Let's go play some poker.
Like, ride with me if you ride with me, you can slide with me if you feel like 550 on the 5 sticky, come get high with me, that's a deal, right? Ride with me if you ride with me, you can slide with me if you feel like 550 on the 5 sticky, come get high with me, that's a deal, right? That's a deal, right? That's a bet, right? That's a bet, right?
Welcome back to the poker vlog. My name is Kieran. This is kind of like the end of an era. One of my greatest memories in poker happened to be in this casino, which is the Bicycle Hotel and Casino, one of the most prominent high stakes or just, I guess, poker venues in all of Southern California, or at least California in general. This casino has actually been bought out for a lot of California poker players get their start and learn about poker, and it's the end of an era with the Park West buying this property and them moving away from the obvious live stream. As you guys have noticed, the live stream is, I guess, technically going out of business here, moving to some other place. This is kind of like a goodbye. Let's hop into today's episode and remove the somberness and the somber note. Let's go win some money. Let's do our old friend, the Bike Casino, some justice.
You can slide with me if you feel like 550 on the 5 sticky, come get high with me, that's a deal, right? Ride with me if you ride with me.
In today's episode, we have so much to look forward to, including a massive pot to end it all off. But first, we have quite the session to go over. In this very first hand to look at, early position limps. I'm in the small blind, I look down at ace 4 of hearts. For most of the session, we'll be playing 5, 10, 20, but to get things started off here, yeah, it's just going to be 5, 10. I decide to isolate this limper to $60, and the limper goes ahead and makes a call, and we're going off to a flop here that is not that great, as it comes queen, 10, 10, all black cards. Well, if only I had an American Express, this would be a good sight to see, but for the time being, it doesn't really coordinate with anything that I have here, so that's not going to stop me. I go ahead and throw out a down bet for 45. My opponent makes a call after some thinking, and the turn card comes a queen of spades. I go ahead and check, and at this point, my opponent decides to throw out a really small bet of 50. Well, against a bet this small, I think calling seems okay, so I go ahead and do that just in case my opponent is betting a chop or something of the sort. And by this point, we get to the river card that comes the 6 of clubs. And I check it over to my opponent, and he throws out a bet for 175. To be quite honest, against this player, and for the rest of the session, this ends up being a pretty good situation and pans out for me. But in real time, I think that, hey, for $175 against an opponent that I have absolutely no history with, and there's a small chance that my opponent could be bluffing, and even if he's not, I think that 175... not every instance is this okay, but considering I feel like we're going to be battling quite a bit today, I decided to throw in the call to kind of get some information. A little expensive, but to force him to show down, I think is not the worst thing in the world. And, you know, sometimes maybe we're chopping the pot or I'm good. If he has a hand like King Jack of Hearts, Jack 9, all those holdings we still beat, that'll probably be inclined to bet this river. Although, like I said, not often they'll be turning their hand into a bluff on the turn. On the river it makes sense, but either way, that's just what's going on in my head. I throw in the call, and yeah, this was just for reconnaissance work, as our opponent ends up showing a 10 here for the bottom boat. Either way, it won't be the end of my situation here. Lost a little bit in this hand, but I think I gained a lot of information, which I will definitely use to my advantage later. The action folds to me on the button, and we look down at ace 5 offsuit. Good enough to come in for a raise, so I go ahead and make it $30. Both the blinds make the call, and the flop comes out ace, queen 5, rainbow. We end up smashing this flop. Whew, this is a good sight to see. At this point, the action player from the big blind that we talked about in the previous hand throws out a little bit of a donk bet for $50. I raise for 200, not worried about my entire range here, just looking to get the most money I can in this spot. My opponent makes a call as the small blind folds, and the turn card comes out the king of diamonds. Not the best card in the world, as obviously this brings in some straights, but more than that, I think this is kind of an action-killing card for my opponent. The only hand that he can have here that improves now is King Queen. So when he checks it over to me, I throw out a big meaty bet here for 600. Like I said, looking to target inferior 2 pairs. And unfortunately, my opponent snap folds. So unfortunate circumstance there. I think the better play would have been to just check and allow my opponent to bluff, which he does have a tendency to do, as we'll find out later in the session. But in real time, you know, it's nice to know that we made some money on this hand. as the session continues to marinate like a good old steak we leave in the fridge overnight, the cutoff decides to open at $60. It's the same opponent that we've been playing in every single hand so far. My opponent just open raised to 6x. Alarm bells are definitely ringing as we look down at pocket ladies, pocket queens. Easy spot to 3-bet no matter how big the opening size is, so I make it $200 to go. The cutoff ends up making the call here, and we're going off out of position to a flop that comes king 5-4 with 2 clubs and a diamond. Okay, not the worst flop in the world. I'd assume aces, kings, and ace-king probably all 4-bet pre-flop, but hey, I have no idea what strategy my opponent is implementing, so I just down-bet to 100, catch-all sizing, going about a fourth the size of the pot. Lucky enough for me, my opponent hates playing poker the way I like to, and he decides to raise it to 500. I think we have a pretty easy call here. We're going off to a turn card that comes the 7 of diamonds. At this point, this brings 2 flush draws in here. There's now the club draw and the diamond draw. When I check it over to my opponent, he does something I was not planning for whatsoever. He throws in about a pot-sized jam for $1,445. I go into the tank and I start trying to decipher what the hell to do. In real time, I just don't think my opponent's going to have a hand like 8-9 suited for a made straight, or 3-6 or some kind of random hand like that. I think I should say 6-8 would be the straight, sorry. But what I'm trying to say is I just don't see my opponent having a whole lot of straights here. And if I can put that aside, what kind of big value hands can I be doing this with? I think most kings can do this outside of maybe king jack or king 10, but king queen can maybe do that, but we block king queen. Ace king can do that, but he didn't 4-bet pre-flop, so I don't know. I feel like most of his range, and when people overplay spots like this and they just overbet the river or the turn, or they don't really know what they're doing, or the flop especially, it just kind of smells like a flush draw. Without me giving away the rest of the hand, I want to let you guys, or ask you folks, what do you think our opponent has? Did he slow play a monster? Is he fast playing a flush draw? What do you guys think? Well, you don't have to wait much longer. I tank and decide to inevitably make the call here. I don't know if I love my call, but hey, in real time, with the read I got, it's just kind of what I went with. The river card comes the 9 of spades, and my opponent shows ace king of spades. So, nice hand for my opponent. I definitely felt like we would have got 4-bet by that pre-flop, and we would have had an easy spot to call and probably check fold the flop, but here we are just getting absolutely destroyed. Not great, but hey, that's just how poker is sometimes. Well, if pocket queens weren't good enough to get us a pot shipped in my direction, pocket Hurons are here, and they're here for the rescue. I'm in late position, and I make it $30 to go. Both the blinds make the call, and the flop comes out favoring them, as it comes 7-5-4 with 2 diamonds and a club. Once again, this is not optimal, as we end up flopping an overpair on a super wet board. That doesn't mean I should be checking here, so I bet $75. Only the big blind makes a call, and the turn card comes out the 3 of diamonds. Now, any 6 makes a straight, which is, great. When my opponent checks over to me, I think we have a pretty easy check back and evaluate. And we do have the king of diamonds as our saving grace if we need it, but it does not come to fruition. The river card comes at 3 of hearts. The one thing this does do is we now counterfeit hands like 5-4, 7-5. All the 2 pairs are now counterfeited, and if my opponent decides to bet that for value, which he does bet for value or for bluff, we don't know yet, he bets 200. I throw in the 2 black chips, and unfortunately for me, those are the last times I'm ever going to see those chips, as I call, and my opponent shows 9-6 offsuit. So, well played by him. Just unfortunate situation, another bad run out, and looks like the ladies couldn't do it, neither could the Cowboys. Well, so far this session has come straight from the depths of hell. Looking to bounce back in some fashion, we end up getting the table change onto the main game. So the last game was a must move. They've put us into the main game, and let's be quite honest, this game's pretty bad. There is one action player in this hand and in this table, and we've got to go over this next hand. The $20 straddle is on, and it will be on for the rest of the video. It folds to me in the big blind. I look down at pocket 4s. Honestly, limping here probably is the best play, but in real time, I just decided 4x since I'm out of position. I make it 80. The straddler makes a call, and we're going to go to a flop that comes 3 deuce deuce with 2 spades. The action on me, I decided to throw out a little bit of a meteor c-bet for 100, a little bigger than half pot, which I don't know if I like or hate, but hey, that's what I do. At this point, my opponent decides to make the call. The turn card comes out the 6 of clubs. I check it over to my opponent, and he decides to bet 250. With about $1,200 remaining here, I think calling is okay. I think, jamming might be something of an interesting play. Considering I double block the straights here, I think I'd be turning my hand into maybe not totally a bluff, but a merge. I think that we can get called off by flush draws here if I jam, and I can probably get a better hand to fold. Something like 6-5 might consider folding, 7-6, and obviously getting a fold from a really strong flush draw that has 2 overs would be great as well. Either way, my opponent bets the 250, I jam the 1200, and he calls. Calling is never the best thing in the world, but hey, there's a small chance we're ahead. The river card comes out the queen of diamonds. I roll over my hand confidently, obviously, sheepishly, but my opponent shows king deuce offsuit, so got a little bit of a loose call there pre-flop, and you can't complain when you're going to get action. Just sucks when the opponent just smashes the flop. Don't really mind my bluff there on the turn. Like I said, I think it's pretty reasonable. I think we can still get called by flush draw sometimes. We can get some big hands with a lot of equity to fold. But either way, this one didn't work out for us this time. We're now into the game for 6K. But first, we're going to go take a walk and try to get our mind right.
Okay, so it's been a while since I had a proper mid-session update. Things are starting off as poor as they can go. Not a whole lot of positive notes. Kings got cracked twice, and then queens got not cracked. I just lost and shouldn't have lost more, but it is what it is. We are looking to lock in. It's about like 11 o'clock right now, so we can still keep playing for another couple hours. The game was really bad for about 30 minutes. Every single player at the table was a pro that was probably significantly better than me, but then the pros all left, or most of them did. Half the table looks pretty interesting, so I'm gonna just walk around, take a breath, because things are not going my way, and then hopefully get back in there and win some money. Let's see if we can't catch some cards, huh? Let's see it.
So on the very first hand that we come back, we get dealt into the straddle. Under the gun limps, the button limps as well, and the action's on me in the straddle, and we look down at, yeah, this is absolute garbage. 9 deuce off. Just to show you guys how bad we've been running, look at what we're getting in the straddle. First hand back. What was that, poker gods? Oh, you want me to shut up? Oh yeah, because the flop is 5 deuce deuce. Somehow we flop trips with this absolute junk garbage of a hand. First hand back, 9 deuce off seemed grim, but look at this, how the tables have turned. Even better yet, the 2 action players of the table are somehow involved in this hand. I check it over to the the under the gun action player who decides to bet off for 75. Definitely a meaty bet here, going about the size of the pot. The button player calls, and I think that at this point we can get our trap loaded. Just flat calling here to let our opponents realize some equity seems like it makes a lot of sense. So I go ahead and do just that. The turn card comes the 10 of clubs, bringing a backdoor flush draw and putting another over out there. I check it to the under the gun player. Mr. Action Player decides to throw out a massive double barrel for $300. And even better yet, the button calls the 300. Well, I'm licking my chops here, and with nearly $1,000 in the middle, I think we have no other option besides going all in. I have about $1,900 in my stack. I rebought for 2K. And it's going all in the middle, baby. Somehow, this garbage has turned into a beautiful flower. The under the gun action player tanks for quite some time before eventually folding. Oh no. But what is this? The button is now in the tank. And in the tank is an understatement. Several minutes go by. You can hear a pin drop at this point. My opponent is thinking about it, going through his decisions. I have no idea what he can possibly have until eventually he decides to make the call. He asks me what I have. I tell him I have a deuce. And he says he has a deuce as well. Oh my goodness, did I just get knit roll destroyed? Oh, I let him know that my kicker's not that good. And then he says his kicker's not that good. Okay. The river card comes the 7 of diamonds. I show my hand and he shows 6 deuce of hearts. That means my kicker plays. Oh my goodness. What a miraculous. Oh my God. I don't even know how to freaking react. That was ridiculous. What a super duper straddle special. Hey, I guess if you complain enough, it's called winding it in, baby. There we go. Looking to ride this heater, I finally got my wings back under me. I'm sailing through the sky like an eagle. The hijack limps, who's one of the action players, and I'm on the button, and we look down at 5-6 of hearts, a suited connector. Man, oh man, this is something I love. I decided to isolate to $80. Only the limper calls, and the flop comes out queen 3 deuce rainbow. We do flop ourselves a gutter ball as well as a backdoor flush draw, and I decide to c-bet, or to down-bet I should say, to $50, and my opponent makes a call. Looking to improve on the turn, and improve we do as we hit a backdoor flush draw, but we also improve to the nuts when it comes the 4 of hearts. Let's go. With the opponent checking it over to me, early on in the session, we double-barreled and bet big on the turn with a bluff, and this time we get to double barrel and bet big with value. I make it $300 to go. My opponent decides to make the call. We're going off to a river card that comes a deuce of diamonds. Pairing the bottom card, which is, again, not really that ridiculous. I don't think my opponent's going to have a set here now that turns into a boat all that often. So when the opponent checks it over to me, I am going in between sizings. My opponent is very sticky, as we have learned in very many hands we've played against him today. And in this spot, we hope this is exactly what has been happening and we've seen all day. He has not been able to fold big pairs and top pairs. So I'm going to put him to the test. I realize that I'm only going to get called by a hand that contains a solid pair. I don't think my opponent's going to ever hero me off with an 8s or 7s type of holding. So I make it $1,100 to go. I'm going for it all. And it seems like we bet the right amount as my opponent goes deep into the tank here. Yet another over 2-minute tank with another opponent here. We're putting our opponents in tough spots, it seems like, today. And after quite some thinking, unfortunately, our opponent makes the fold. Gosh darn it. Maybe 900 he calls, but honestly, if your opponent tanks for over 2 minutes, it probably is a decent-sized bet. Unfortunately, we couldn't get max value, but hey, we'll take it because we're running good, baby. On the heater, in this next spot, we're playing a 9-handed, $100 per person, no limit, single board bomb pot. Some of the most boring poker that there is to play, but hey, you know, easier for my editor to edit and much easier for all of us to follow along. So we're going off to a flop 9 ways that comes king 8 deuce with 2 clubs. The cutoff bet's 200, and I look down at my hand, and this is the action player we've been playing all these hands with, and we look down at ace 8. We have the ace of clubs, which is freaking awesome, and we flop middle pair with the nut kicker. At this spot, I think calling is okay. Our opponent bet's so small, it's 1/5. So I decide to make the call here. Everyone else folds, luckily, and the turn card is the chef's kiss. Only the poker gods could have bestowed this honor upon me as it comes the ace of spades. Bink! We now improve to 2 pair, and even better yet, our opponent won't stop betting. He bets for $500. At this point, the jig is up. It's the easiest part of my life that I've ever had to accomplish. We're all in for 1,800 effective. Our opponent calls off instantly. Snap calls. Okay, hopefully we didn't run into deuces or kings. We're going off to a river card. One time that comes the jack of hearts, a 5K pot, and it's shipped my way after I show my hand. Our opponent is in utter disgust. Looks like we needed that turn card, but either way, we are happy to take this pot down. Rounding out today's session, we have another couple hands to fire through. This next hand, I'm under the gun with pocket 9s. I raise it up to 60. The small blind action passive player calls, and the big blind, who's a solid pro, decides to 3-bet to 300. Against a solid pro, I think calling here is pretty mandatory. They can obviously be bluffing in this spot. It's not always queens plus. And like I said, we're playing like 5K effective here. So if we can hopefully cooler him and flop a set, that's a good spot too. Either way, I call, small blind folds, and the flop comes out pretty good as it comes out 7-6 deuce with 2 hearts. We have the 9 of hearts if that matters at all, and we flop an overpair. At this point, my opponent decides to start a small c-bet for $100. Going 1/6 here, it's pretty tiny. Kind of a disrespectful c-bet if I say so myself. So I decide to raise to 500. This can complete 2 things. My opponent has an overpair. He's never going to 3-bet me on this flop, and he's never going to lead the turn. So with all that being said, if I raise here, I can technically get myself to possibly a free showdown. My opponent calls my raise, and we're going off to a turn card that comes the ace of spades. I was just going to say that just because my opponent calls doesn't mean that he's always going to have a better hand. But on this turn card, yeah, all of that hope is probably gone. All ace X of hearts now improved to top pair, and all of his floats like ace king, ace queen are going to be improving to top pairs. I quickly check this through. When the river card comes the king of hearts, bringing the front door flush, my opponent decides to bet out 1k. Against this sizing, I think about it for some time and I consider that I can possibly turn my hand into a bluff. And I just come to the realization that that's probably kind of stupid. I can have way better candidates to bluff with on this river. And unfortunately, this is just not a spot that I want to do it. My hand is either just not good enough to call and just not a good enough candidate to bluff with. So I ended up just pitching it into the muck. And luckily for us, our opponent was kind enough to tell us later on that he had ace queen with the ace of hearts. So probably wasn't going to be folding to a bluff jam on the river or a bluff raise, but either way, here we are moving on to the next hand. Finishing off the vlog with an absolute bang. In this next hand, the cutoff makes it $50. We've pretty much only played with this action player the whole night, which is kind of good, right? I'm in the small blind and I look down at ace queen offsuit. Easy spot for us to 3-bet, so I make it 225. Only the cutoff makes a call. We're going out of position to a flop here that looks pretty good as it comes king, jack, 3, all diamonds. Diamond check. We got the queen of diamonds, so we have the second nut flush draw as well as a gutter ball to the straight. I decided down bet for 150. My opponent thinks about it for a little bit of time actually and then throws in the call. We're going off to a turn card that comes in 9 of diamonds. Awesome. We now improve to a flush here, and I think we go from betting as a bluff to just check calling the rest of the way down. I decided to check it over to my opponent. If he decides to blast off, so be it. He bets 500. Easy call for us here, and the river card comes a 3 of clubs, pairing the bottom card. Not the greatest river in the entire world, but once again, on the turn card, we had an easy spot to check call. On the river card, we have an even easier spot to just check call. Unfortunately, it won't come to that as my opponent snap checks it back. When he checks it back, we just have the nuts every time. So I show my hand, and the pot is pushed towards me, and we go ahead and take yet another solid pot down. After being in for nearly $6,000, we found a way to muster up the ability to get damn near even. It feels so good, but I don't even get enough time to let all the happiness and success sink in when we're going off to the very next hand. Literally, the very next shuffle, I'm on the button here, and the cutoff, who's that solid pro we've been talking about, decides to raise to $60. I'm on the button. I look down at pocket sevens. It's nice to throw these kind of hands into 3-bets here. So I go and do just that. I make it 180 to go. If I can take this down pre-flop, that's awesome. But against a solid thinking player in position, can't be all that bad. Especially not when he calls and the flop comes out ace 10-7. We flop bottom set on one of the most coordinated and juicy board textures I've seen in a while. Flush draws, straight draws, sets. There's so much to be had out there. And with the opponent checking over to me, I think down betting here is a little bit of a mistake. I throw out a bet of 150, but I think in real time, we have to bet massive here. There's so many hands that my opponent can have that will be drawing or for value, to say the least. I think betting pot here might be kind of interesting, but hey, I bet 150 and my opponent makes a call. The turn card puts away a lot of worries. As the turn comes the ace of spades. We now improve to a boat, and we go from kind of looking to decline some equity to hoping my opponent can continue to come along with his flush draws and straight draws. When he checks to me, I bet 425. This pot is ballooning up quickly, and betting somewhere in the neighborhood of 60% seems to make the most sense. But unfortunately for my opponent, it doesn't make that much sense. But not because he folds, but because he raises to $1,500. Well, alarm bells are ringing like crazy. I mean, this is definitely a solid pro player, a very good thinking player, but even then, not a whole lot of bluffs to be had here. And if anything, a definitely super sick combo draws possibly my opponent has. I don't think a whole lot of aces are raising here, but hey, I have a boat. It's hard to fold these, so I make the call. The river card leaves me with the effective third nuts as it comes the 5 of clubs. And at this point, my opponent thinks about it for some time, and as he's thinking, it hits me. My opponent's going to go all in, and I have only $3,800 left in my stack, and I'm going to be put to the test. Sure enough, he announces the words, all in, and I have one of the sickest spots I'll probably be in my entire life.
Oh my god. Good night, man. Good luck.
This might look like a net roll, actually. I cannot think of very many bluffs that can credibly go with this line here, getting to the river, outside of a hand specifically like Jack 10 or 9-10 of hearts, which I think are the best bluffing candidates as they block boats and don't correlate with the nut flush draw that I might be going off with or chasing. Oh, this is a sick spot. $3,800 for me to call. There's definitely more than that in this pot already. This is kind of a nasty one. I mean, the only hands that are better than us that we can credibly give our opponent here are ace 10 and pocket 10s. That's literally only two combos. That's the only two value hands that we can give our opponent. The only two in this spot. The problem is, do people in live poker, good, bad, the middle, are they bluffing enough on this river? I can think of credibly two solid hands that I think should be bluffing this river hand with. And like I said, Jack 10 and 9-10 of hearts are the only ones I can think of. Maybe Queen 10 of hearts here sometimes is okay, but I don't think he'll be ever bluffing with the nut flush draw that bricks out like King Queen of hearts or King Jack of hearts, as I don't think you want to be holding the King of hearts on this river as a bluff, as you'd hope that I'd have that. All that to be said, I don't even know how to, I don't even know what to say. I'm overwhelmed in the spot. I don't know what my opponent can have, and I even say it in real time, but I feel like I can even be net rolling. Although I don't think my opponent's ever betting worse for value, like ace jack, ace queen, or trips here. I don't know what to do, and I have no history on this opponent, and I put my hands to my face, and I think my hand's just too good to fold here. That would be kind of a sick spot, but I mean, I don't know. Let me know in the comment section down below what the hell you think our opponent has. But after quite some time, I just throw in the call. I just throw in the call. What am I going to do? What can I do? Is this a cooler? Am I net rolling? It turns out that it is not the latter, and we got absolutely cooled off. Our opponent has the absolute nuts, as he has ace 10. Well, not the absolute nut, but, you know, in his end, he has a nuts. He has ace 10. That one stung. That one sucked, guys. That one was painful.
Oh shit. No lie, this one really hurt. Like the live stream died, so did I. Man, that last pot was fucking hell, man. That last pot was just crazy. It feels like the last 2 years have just gone like that. I want to feel the run good. I just want to feel like being behind in a massive pot and just like catching up, and I just feel like I'm mostly just venting to you guys. It just sucked. I mean, it's part of poker. Running bad and whatever, but hell, man, that one sucked. Fuck, I don't even know, like, that sucked. Obviously some mistakes in what happened today, which is gonna happen when you play tired. But after we rebought for a fresh stack, I kind of just like locked in. I just felt like I was hitting cards, which is obviously helpful, and then I just felt like I was laser focused. It felt good. I felt like I was in like the ebbs and flows of poker, which you guys know is it's a beautiful feeling when you're catching cards and playing aggressive, and the board is the run is cooperating with you. So that felt really great, and yeah, that was awesome. We were in for 6K, and we ended up. It's only like 2 buy-ins, really. We had a chance there, obviously. We were looking really good for a massive. We were looking good for a big one there, y'all. It's gonna take me a while to shake this one off. Just the frustration. It's piling. It's freaking piling. The one thing is, we've been running pretty good and playing pretty solid. The entire month of April, we hadn't lost a single session, so we were booking win after win after win after win after win. It was freaking sick, and then today we lose a ton, so that's just how it happens sometimes. Sorry if I feel like I'm venting, guys. I just lost like 11 or 12K pot when I was my opponent was drawing to like 10%, so a little frustrated, but it is what it is. I think the venting can stop now. This is probably getting really sad, so I love you guys all. Have a lovely day. I will not come back to this fucking place for the rest of this year. I don't believe in superstition, but hey, if there is such a thing, why even tempt it? Love you guys all dearly. Stay happy, healthy. More importantly, we're going to the tables. We were in for 6K, out for 0. Oh, love you guys all. Have a great day. Deuces.
It's too easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. Two.